Good morning, my name is Sandra, and today I have the pleasure to interview the teacher Cesar Castillo. He works at Colombo Americano here in Buenaventura, and today I'm going to ask him some questions.
Thanks a lot for the invitation,
Okay.
Sandra.
Thank you, teacher. Okay, teacher, what do you think about the culture?
Well, I think the culture is a very important element of social life because the culture is actually what defines a particular group and it reflects their habits, customs. In those habits, we include dancing, foods, and let's say every way they relate to each other. It means the way they interact with each other. So I would say culture is actually that definition or those characteristics that define a particular group in the society.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, teacher, what is the influence of culture in the process of a foreign language learning?
Well, I think it's actually really high. It's a really high influence because since we're learning a foreign language, culture is implied in it. Actually, language is part of the culture. So if we want to learn a different language, of course, we need to learn a little bit about the culture from where that language is spoken. Then it's actually implicit in there. So you always need to know something about the culture of that language you're learning.
The same way the people have the opportunity to travel to other countries, they must learn a different culture.
Exactly, exactly. You don't learn only about the language, but you need to learn about the culture.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's right. Okay, teacher. How do you involve culture in the strategies you use in your English classes? Give real examples.
Well, like I said before, it's really important because we can't pretend to learn foreign language if we don't know anything about the culture.
That's right.
I use it, of course, I try to include it. Not only the foreign country culture, but also my culture or my students' culture, because sometimes we make something like some comparisons, we can say, right? And we see like some elements of the foreign country's culture,
Okay.
as well as we see some elements of our own culture. Then sometimes we tend to compare those two cultures, how they influence us, and probably the way we influence them. But anyway, it's necessary to be included. One particular example, or I would say a particular experience, is that I was having a video conference with a friend who lives in the United States.
Okay, that's good.
He teaches Spanish there, well, I'm teaching English here. Then we have our students to interact, both in Spanish and in English, because they are trying to learn Spanish and we are trying to learn English. So there was this space in which they interacted in English. And then there was another time when they could speak Spanish. But there was something particular. It was really nice because one of my students asked, or one of the girls, it was a boy, my student, asked for her cell phone number. And immediately they started laughing out there in the United States. So after my friend in the United States noticed that, he cleared up. He told my students, hey, when you ask somebody in North America for his or her telephone number, it means that probably you are interested in this person, but in a romantic aspect. So you're probably interested in having a relationship or something like that. For us, what we practice here, let's say it's just a matter of practice of personal information, then we just ask for some details of the person's life in order to know where they live, where they're from, and things like that. And that includes their telephone number. But the person is never interested in having a romantic relationship with the other.
Because they have different cultures.
Exactly. So it was a really, really relevant aspect of the culture because for us, it probably means not much. But for them, it means something different. So when you interact with other people, you really need to know a little bit about their culture because you might make some mistakes or you might probably do something which might be offensive to them. So it's really, really important to let them know about what the information they express means and under what contexts it should be expressed. So it's really important to include it's really important to include culture in the learning teaching process.
Okay, good teacher. And what do you consider are the most important elements to success in the second language learning?
Well, there are a lot of aspects to be included in this process for a successful foreign language process. What I probably consider, based on my experience, that motivation is really important.
Yes.
There is this situation surrounding us, probably, and it's that students consider English as a very difficult language to learn. So sometimes they have a lot of difficulties, or they have the perceptions that they're going to have a lot of difficulties learning the language. Then it's really important to let them know that, well, it probably has a level of difficulty, but it's something they can actually handle. So you need to give them the strategies, and most importantly, probably I think, recovery and everything related to the motivation, that they are able to do it and that they can enjoy the learning process.
That's it.
Sometimes when you're doing something and you don't enjoy it, it's hard for you to learn it, or it's hard for you to do it, to carry out your activities, because you're actually not enjoying it. But while you're enjoying learning English, yes, you're also learning. So it's like the two activities right there. There's some emotional aspect involved in it, and the other one we could say is like the academic aspect. They're learning, but at the same time they're enjoying. So I think sometimes it makes a really big difference when they learn and simultaneously they can enjoy the learning process.
Can create good methodologies to catch the attention, to get the attention of the students.
Definitely. I would say that's really important.
Okay, teacher, do you think that students prefer to learn a foreign language through their own culture?
Well, I guess they're always going to be interested in that because, well, they listen to other people speaking English, let's say. They listen to foreigners speaking English, but they're also curious about, well, how would I apply English into, different expressions. Let's say I use colloquial expressions. So they have always asked me for different questions, such as, hey, how can I say this in English? Let's say colloquial expressions that are very common in our culture. How would you translate them into English? Some of them, sometimes not. I mean, there is one of those expressions that is probably used in English, so you teach them that. Additionally, this motivation I talked about previously, I think implies giving students like classes which are meaningful to them. How come? They are really associated to their real personal daily lives. So when they can learn English, associating it with their personal lives, I think it's actually meaningful to them. Then in this case, so they will be learning while they're doing everything they usually do.
So the environment.
Exactly. Well, actually, I think it would make the learning process easier because they learn through those experiences they always have. But what you're doing is adapting English to their habits, let's say. And like I said before, remember that all those characteristics that involve probably a person's behavior individually and socially that is involved in the culture. Then when they can learn English, but they can also apply it to their culture and make it a meaningful experience, I think it would definitely help the teaching and learning process.
Okay, teacher, the last question is, what is your opinion about working with people with different cultures in the classrooms?
Well, their backgrounds are really important.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And it actually enriches the process. English is spoken worldwide.
Yes.
Since it is spoken worldwide, there are different countries and therefore different cultures in which it is spoken. So you can't pretend to teach English based just on one culture, let's say the North American culture or the English culture. No, there are other cultures involved in the process. Then we have Australian, Swiss ones, well, from all
Russian,
kind of
different.
exactly different nationalities. So it will always be more, well, it will always enrich the process when you have people from different backgrounds or different cultures that can give some tips or ideas about how they use the language, for example, or something real important is like what would be good manners in their culture, because we have a lot of differences in cultures. And I can recall one example which is associated to gesturing. We sometimes gesture when we're speaking, we do like this or things like these, but they mean different things in different cultures.
Countries,
Exactly.
yes, that's right.
So we need to be aware about those
Mhm.
things. That's really important.
And have an open mind because every people thinking a different way.
Exactly. For example, another thing when we talk about meeting a person for the first time, it's very common for us Latinos to hug or to shake hands, or we tend to be very expressive in that way. Yes, when we're greeting a person probably for the first time or when we know another person, but there are other cultures in which their personal space is kind of wider. So they don't really like hugging or kissing, for example. In Asia, for example, you might find very big differences in those aspects of culture. So we really need to be aware of that. And when you have people from different backgrounds, different cultures, you can actually learn more and enrich that process. So I think it's a really nice experience to have people from different cultures.
Teacher, thank you very much for your attention.
My pleasure.
Okay, God bless you and have a nice day. Thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot.
Bye.